we'll go from there.
Hello, folks. My name is Eddie Pickett. I'm the Senior Associate Dean and Director of Recruitment at Pomona College, and my pronouns are he, him, and I will pass it off to my colleague at Scripps.
Hi, everybody. I'm Yiniro Morris. I am from Scripps College, and I'm an admissions counselor, and I'll pass it over to CMC.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you today. My name is Jennifer Hirsch. I'm the Senior Associate Dean of International Admission here at Claremont McKenna, and I'll pass it on back to Natalia.
Perfect. Alrighty. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Natalia Duran. I am an Associate Director of Admission over at Harvey Mudd College. Pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am going to go ahead and pass it on over to Kapili.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kapili Moniz. I'm an admission counselor and Pitzer grad. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I will pass it back to Natalia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so let's go ahead and go over today's overview of our program. And if you can go to the next slide, we are going to be covering quite a few things in today's program. We're going to start off with just an overview of the undergraduate colleges, what we offer, some of the different shared resources that we share across the consortium. And then, of course, we're going to have time for each of the institutions to do about a 5 to 6 minute presentation on their individual college. So tell you a little bit more about how we differ, what makes us so unique. And then, of course, we're going to make time at the very end for what we know as a Q&A session. So we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes to answer some questions live. We do have chatters from every single one of the institutions on that is actually here. You'll see them. They have their cameras off. They are there chatting away and answering all of your questions in the Q&A section. So should you have questions for a specific institution, again, go ahead and make sure that you put that institution's name in the Q&A session and try to keep all questions to the Q&A, not the chat. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and let's get started with an overview of Southern California, of Claremont, who we are and where we are. So as you can see on the map, the Claremont Colleges, we are located, unsurprisingly, in the small town known as Claremont, California. We're actually pretty centrally located to the mountains, the beach, and the desert. So you can get to all three within about an hour based off of whichever one you're going to. So you can get to Joshua Tree National Park in about an hour, Mount Baldy in about 20 minutes, and depending on which beach, about 30 to an hour, depending on which one you prefer. We are centrally located to a couple of different airports. So for those of you that are joining us from international or out of state, you have the opportunity to actually fly into Ontario International Airport, which is only about 15 minutes from campus. And if you like going into downtown LA, because we are located in a suburban town, you have the access to downtown LA via Union Station and the Metrolink. So just south of Pomona's campus is a Metrolink line that you actually have access to as a student that you can go in and out. It's about a 45-minute to an hour ride down into downtown LA. All right, now let's talk about life in Claremont itself. So we mentioned that we are a small suburban town. All 5 undergraduate Claremont colleges are located within about 1 square mile. So you can see on your map how we are all situated. The idea with the consortium was that we were all supposed to build off of one another. And Claremont itself is a pretty tiny town. We only have about 37,000 people, and it's known as the city of trees and PhDs. So with that being said, there's a lot of academia happening in this town, and it was actually initially created with the idea of having 10 schools in Claremont. So with that being said, 5 undergraduate schools and 2 graduate institutes were actually created. Wait, can you go back, Eddie, real quick? But with that being said, each of these different schools had the opportunity for our students to really take classes at different schools, to do the different dining or have different dining opportunities, but also every single school has a different history between it. So to give you just really quick ideas to the founding order, and every school is obviously going to talk a little bit more about this. Pomona is by far the largest and the oldest out of all the schools. They were built with the idea of bringing that kind of East Coast style liberal arts school here to the West Coast. And so they were on their own before the idea of the consortium came to be, and they modeled it after the Oxford-Cambridge model. So as there was a population boom here in Southern California, they decided instead of turning into a larger research institution, why not create a consortium where students are allowed to take their classes at different schools, eat at the different dining halls. So Pomona was on their own, and then came Scripps College. Scripps is a reflection of the 1920s women's suffrage movement here in the United States. And after Scripps came Claremont McKenna. Claremont McKenna is a reflection of the 1940s. You actually had World War II, and you had a lot of veterans during that time. So they very much were built for those that wanted government, leadership, everything happening there. And then in the 1950s, another decade ahead, you had Harvey Mudd College, who was built as a reflection of the space race and the need for scientists, engineers, and mathematicians. And the last but not least is Pitzer, who's a reflection of the 1960s civil rights era. So everything that was happening in every single one of those different decades was built and with the idea, or was around the idea of the built and the values of the different institutions. Go ahead and keep on going to the next slide to talk more about what we have in common. So as I mentioned, we are undergraduate colleges, which means that the students at every single one of these different institutions is seeking either a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor's of Science, depending on the institution. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jen to keep going because I realized I went over time.
No, you're doing great. So building off what Natalia just discussed, the unique and vibrant history of the Claremont Colleges, she outlined how we are different, our missions and values rooted in our histories, highlight how we approach higher education a little bit differently. But what we have in common is that we actually all deliver our education through the same philosophical lens, and that's through the lens of a liberal arts and sciences experience. What you'll notice across all of our campuses is that we're all small student bodies, as Natalia outlined, in terms of how the size of our undergraduate students. We all are undergraduate student populations only. There are the graduate schools in the consortium, but they're very tangential to the experience. And so there's no graduate students in the classroom on our and the undergraduate campuses, and all of the resources and academic opportunities at our 5 schools are solely available just to our undergraduate populations. All of our class sizes and the classroom experience is going to look similarly small across all of our campuses. So as mentioned already, as a student at one of our schools, you'd have the chance to take classes at the other 4 campuses, and you'll continue to experience the same intimate classroom setting. And then as a liberal arts and science undergraduate college, a bit of a myth is that there's a lack of research, and quite contrary. We have a robust amount of research opportunities through academic departments, different institutes and centers, and many different types of opportunities across the academic year and even over the summer. And so many of our students at all of our schools are diving into in-depth and even graduate level research on our campuses. There's study abroad. We have 2 athletic divisions that we share. So that's a little unique with the consortium, where Scripps Claremont McKenna and Harvey Mudd field 1 athletic program, and then Pitzer and Pomona field another athletic program. But the opportunities are very similar in terms of the resources and size. So moving on to a little more in depth about the academic experience. It is small, that small seminar style. You'll experience this again across all 5 of our campuses. And with that cross-class registration, it means that you'll have access to classes and academic departments and different disciplines and faculty that might be a bit unique to one of our campuses over the others. You will see some common disciplines and departments offered across all of our campuses, but each of those areas might differ a little bit in how that discipline is taught and delivered based on our unique faculty, based on our missions as institutions. And so getting to know us at our core will give you a sense of how we differ, but taking advantage of those opportunities and being in this vibrant academic community allows you to a broader range of academic options, classes, and viewpoints than a standalone liberal arts college. There are a few academic areas in which we share, so a few intercollegiate majors that we pull from classes across different departments offered across the Claremont Colleges to create a major that students can pursue. And then a hallmark of the liberal arts experience is advising. We have teacher scholars at our campuses, so they're very invested in not just the classroom experience, but also in advising through your academic plan over 4 years, serving as a mentor and someone that can serve as a resource professionally as well. So there's very close-knit relationships, and that will extend to professors that you might have in classes that you take at the other campuses. So it is a very communal, collegial environment. On the social side, on the next slide, as mentioned, the collaborations across the campuses, being able to use your meal plan at all the different dining halls, having a wide array of food options, again, much broader than a standalone liberal arts college. We also have a dynamic social environment where our students can access over 250 clubs and organizations across the 5 undergraduate Claremont colleges. You will have some clubs and organizations that are unique to your institution and open just to your campus community, but most of them are going to be open to all of the Claremont Colleges undergraduate students. So you can come together across the college communities around interests, identity, professional organizations, and different types of interests. There are some resource centers, such as our chaplains and religious services and mental health and support services, student health center, the Claremont Colleges library. These are all run and funded and supported by the whole Claremont consortium and utilized by all of the students across the undergraduate and graduate schools. I mentioned our athletic programs, and then those collaborations also extend to intramural and club sports as well. So it's a really dynamic social environment. The last thing I'll add here is that residence life is not shared. So we all are residential communities. All of our students are living on campus all 4 years, but you don't live at the other colleges. So your home base is at your individual Claremont College. And I believe I'll pass it on to Eddie about admission.
Yeah, so I would absolutely agree with that. As a Claremont graduate myself, or one of the Claremont colleges, I was a Pomona Pitzer athlete, and you do get to spend time on all the campuses if you want, but you want to find your people. Thinking about the pieces of admissions that we do share, we are all Common App schools. Some of us have QuestBridge, some have Coalition as well. We all read holistically, and so we want to get to know you as a person, not you as your statistics, because most of you can do the work who apply, but it's, what makes you unique to our school. We have supplemental essays, meaning that, you're going to have writing specific to us. We all meet full need. We're one of the 5 of us are one of about 90 schools in the US who can say that we all guarantee to meet full need. And so that's a privilege that we hold dear. Both have early decision and regular decision options. So early decision being binding, regular decision being non-binding. And then we have virtual and online different programs as we go through this. And then as we think about the consortium as well, just the different offices, this is a good way of seeing the admissions pieces. And so some of us track demonstrated interest, some don't. For those who don't know what demonstrated interest is, it means that we're tracking to see if you are engaging with our college. And so each one tracks a little differently or doesn't at all. So you can see that. And you can see the interviews here as well. Pomona is the only one who does not have interviews. That was a change last year. But here's some things we have in common. I would say that my spouse actually works at a different Claremont college, and I can guarantee you we do not talk about admissions across the colleges. Like, we even share 3 states together. We don't talk a lot during reading season. We cannot share information across the schools when it comes to student information in the admissions process. So that question I know is coming. We'll answer that now. To move forward, as we start into the individual schools, Pomona gets to be first because we are the founding member of the Claremonts. We're the oldest, as Natalia said earlier. So we were founded to be the traditional New England liberal arts school in Southern California. We are the all-encompassing liberal arts school. And so that comes with the breadth of knowledge and the depth of knowledge, whether that's in one of our 48 majors or in your distribution requirement. We have a distribution requirement that's 6 areas, one of them being cultural ethics and values. And then you have the typical, they have different fancier titles, but humanities, social science, natural science, math, and writing as well. I think looking at our strategic vision and who we are, our strategic vision at Pomona asks students, faculty, staff, alumni to, in quotes, distinguish themselves as leaders who know how to ask big questions, confront big challenges, and solve big problems, end quote. And so as we think about that, we're always reminding ourselves of how do we create space for students to flourish by expanding access and inclusion opportunities, both domestically and internationally. I think in a nutshell, what it really boils down to is that Pomona cares about curiosity, about inclusion, and creating opportunities. That starts as you walk onto campus. The first thing you'll do when you're here during orientation is you'll move into your dorm, and then you'll do this piece, and that's through the gates. And so on 6th Street, we have gates that say, "Let only the eager, thoughtful, and reverent enter here." And so you can see that curiosity part starts from the first moment you're on campus. We want students who are going to come and ask big questions. We're going to nurture that curiosity while you're on campus, and we want you to leave a lifelong learner. And so one stat to show that is that over 2/3 of our students will go to grad school within 10 years, whether that's an MBA, a medical degree, a JD, an education degree, you name it, they're going to move on and continue that lifelong learning. One of the first classes you're going to take is ID1. It's a critical inquiry seminar. And those are to embed that sense of curiosity from the beginning and in a writing intensive space. But it doesn't mean it has to be in English. And so some of the sample topics have been health economics. It's been borders and belonging in Latinx America, or theater in the age of climate change. And so as you can see, that interdisciplinary nature of a liberal arts school is starting from the very beginning. I think one of the distinguishing factors about Pomona and our majors is that you have to choose a Pomona major, so you can't major off campus. However, you can choose classes off campus, so you can take a little over a third of your classes at one of the other Claremont colleges, but again, you have to choose a Pomona major. Thinking about that inclusion space, we want you to learn with and from each other and from students who have different lived experiences. That's a really important part of college. And so as you think about all the people who are coming to campus to gather and share their thoughts, these are some of the forms of diversity, but not all of them. And so we have all 50 states represented, including multiple territories. We have over 60 countries represented. We're over 50% students of color. And we've also been over 20% first generation to college students as well. And so as all of you come and share that information with each other, you're learning, again, with and from each other. Another piece is that 2/3 of the transfer students have been from community colleges. So again, that's a different perspective being added into your classroom. Another way that we build community in that inclusion space is also your sponsor group. And we call them your spiblings, your sponsor siblings. And so that is your first year hall. You have a residential advisor, but you also have a sponsor, and that is to have a sophomore or junior mentor you can go ask questions to from the very beginning. So that's a fun part of campus. Some of the fun things outside of the classroom. So in the career development space, which we all have different career development offices, you have SERP, which is the Summer Undergraduate Research Project. Last year, we had 200 students in the summer doing research. 45% of them were doing their own original research. So they picked the topic, they picked the professor they're going to work with, and they did the work. Or PSIP is a Pomona College internship program. And if you have an underpaid or non-paid internship, Pomona will pay you to do that because we don't want you to lose your opportunities. Outside of the classroom, I think one of the fun days is the ski beach day. You literally go skiing in the morning, you do a bonfire on the beach in the evening. And so there's not a lot of places in the US that can do that. Obviously, all 5 of us can do that. We host that at Pomona. And the athletics rivalry is a real thing. As a former football and baseball player here, it's a fun time. You get to see each other in class and in dining halls too. I think the last 2 things I'll talk about is financial aid. And so we are incredibly blessed to be able to offer no loans in our financial aid packages. We are only need-based aids. We do not offer any merit aid, but we also don't put any loans in the financial aid. And then on the admissions side, our admissions criteria is public knowledge. And so if you Google search Pomona College valued qualities, you'll be able to see this. And those 5 things we're going to mark you evident or not evident for are intellectually capable, academically committed, i.e., can you do the work? We're going to look at your transcript, we're testing optional, and then your school profile and your home life, because those 2 things affect your transcript to see, can you do the work? Most of you, the answer is going to be yes. Investment in community and network builder. So what are you doing outside of the classroom? So your community, your school, or your family to get involved. PT is our personal traits. And so we're going to do a character check. Do you have strong morals, role model qualities, ethics, and values? You do not need to be a leader to have good character. And commitment to collaborative engagement and perspective is CSEP. And that's when we look at inclusion. And so are you willing to be in a community and share your perspective, but also learn from different perspectives and be challenged on that? And finally, because we talk a lot about curiosity, is probing inquiry and creative learning. And that's the curiosity check. And so as we go through your application, that's what we're going to look for to mark you evident or not evident. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague at Scripps.
Thanks, Eddie. And yeah, so Scripps, as Natalia nicely laid out our history, we were founded in 1926 during the suffragist movement by Ellen Browning Scripps, who was a philanthropist and a suffragist. So she really believed in women's access to education. So thus us being born. Today, we have over 65 majors offered directly on our campus. And we're pretty spread out through the sciences, the arts, humanities. It's also really reflected in our most popular majors, which are biology, politics, English, neuroscience. But we are also really focused on interdisciplinary studies. One of my favorite majors, I always like to tell people, it's like environment, economics, and politics is one major. So being able to, I know we've already talked about interdisciplinary learning as a foundation for our liberal arts educations throughout the 5 Cs. But thinking about it, if you're not too familiar with that terminology, it's thinking about complex problems or just topics through different disciplines, right? So not just humanities, but also STEM and also arts. But here at Scripps, it's really a big focus, interdisciplinary studies, and you kind of get a taste of that when you step foot on campus in your first year. As we mentioned before, you can take classes at any of the Claremont colleges. At Scripps, there's actually no max of how many classes you can take off campus. You can also major off campus if we don't directly offer it. But there is one program that's only for Scripps students, and it's specifically for first years in your first 2 semesters. It's called CORE. It's this really great, I always like to say it's a crash course into learning about how to write at a college level, how to do research at a college level, but it has this interdisciplinary focus. So it's taught by 15 or so professors through class-wide lectures and also small discussion groups. And every year they choose an overarching theme. So one year it was education and inequality, but in that team of professors, there was also a STEM professor, an arts professor. So you're able to kind of step into this interdisciplinary mindset right when you get to campus in a small class of just Scripps first years. So that's a little bit about that foundational work that we do in the beginning of your educational experience. And, you know, this is a really big foundation of our educational experience, but so is the women's college experience. And how we see this in the academic space is that our professors are trained to really center their curriculum and also their classroom spaces on marginalized voices. So this can look like, you know, thinking really critically about the reader or the thinkers that the curriculum or the syllabus has, or these classroom discussions really centering around different perspectives. And so that's kind of how you see that women's college put into play in those academic spaces. And then Eddie, if you can move to the next slide. Thinking about also what I love to talk about us being a women's college is also our career planning and resources office. We work really closely with our alumni to still engage with our students and really kind of help collaborate with them on really fun webinars. One of my favorite webinars that we did last year was like how to negotiate salary in a male-dominated field, or we have our own version of LinkedIn at Scripps called Olive Grove, and so students and alumni will connect there, and also we'll have internship postings. 80% of our students complete internships within their 4 years here, so that's a really great way to kind of think about if you're interested in a women's college, that alumni piece being a really big part of it. 60% of our students study abroad. As we said before, we all meet 100% of demonstrated financial need, and whatever your financial aid is carries over to you when you study abroad. So whether you're in Italy or in Claremont, those tuition prices are the same. And I think thinking about admissions, we also offer merit scholarships outside of need-based aid, $15,000 to $30,000, and we use our markers like academic performance, but also our community fit markers, which we use for admissions period. Because we're a women's college, we really care about how, you know, not only will you be a good student in the classroom, but also a good community member, a good roommate. And so 4 things we look for in your application when we're doing that holistic review is integrity, service, leadership, and creativity. You don't have to have all 4 pillars, but we find that our most competitive applicants have a few or are really strong in one. So those are things that we look for when we're looking at community fit. And I'll round us off with thinking about like campus traditions. My favorite one is Wednesday afternoon tea at 3:30 p.m. on the dot every Wednesday during the school year. Our dining staff, our lovely dining staff, puts together different treats and different teas. One week we had like street corn bar, and the line was through the Amazon package lockers, and I was there. And so that was a really fun thing. And I think it's really cool because it's very like intentional community building. And I think that's something that we really care about. So professors will sometimes stop class and they will go, even if they have a lecture at 3:30 p.m. With their students to Wednesday afternoon tea. So that's one of my favorite campus traditions. And I will turn it over to CMC.
All right. So Claremont McKenna College, as mentioned earlier, we were founded in 1946. Our mission is coming out of a time that we were exiting World War II. We were a men's college until 1976. So in those first generations, it was really thinking about leadership for public purpose. So our mission is to prepare our students for thoughtful and productive lives and responsible leadership in business, government, and the professions. In the landscape of liberal arts colleges, that's a pretty specific mission, and we deliver that in many different ways. But at our core, the goal is to provide a comprehensive liberal arts education that emphasizes economics and public and political science, with integrations of the social sciences, natural sciences, and the humanities. Our teacher scholars, as I mentioned before, our faculty are very dedicated to the liberal arts experience in the classroom. So discussion-based, seminar style, very collaborative and involved classroom dynamic where students are prepared to be engaged in the topics and engage in conversation, not just with faculty, but with their peers, and really use that to dive into research on current issues and topics that are affecting our world today. And really understanding the public policy issues that are aligned with those issues, and how our students as future leaders can ensure that they make great change and engagement on those issues. So some of the highlights of values within our areas, within our mission, is that focus on leadership. That's something we also look for in the application process, so I'll touch on that in a moment. But an emphasis on leadership specifically for public purpose. Also an emphasis on understanding how the world functions and how our students and what they're interested in can impact how that works in the communities they're a part of, and getting practical experience. And also the ideas around what we call our open academy, which are constructive dialogue, viewpoint diversity, and freedom of expression. So ensuring that our students are in a place where they can share ideas and perspectives, feel comfortable and heard in all spaces within the classroom environment, the social environment, and the residential community. So academically, our students will go through a liberal arts education with the general education requirements. Most of our common majors are going to be areas like economics, public policy, international relations, data science, psychology, and we have a new science center and a new science major called integrated sciences. The integrated sciences major is a new approach to science in which that learning and integration happens at the start of the major. And so we no longer are offering specific majors within each isolated natural science discipline, but the major ensures that students get a foundation across biology, chemistry, and physics, computation, and data science, and really designing the major to educate students to take on the challenges and most prominent societal issues in STEM. So there'll be specializations at the latter part of the major that focus on the environment, human health, and the human brain. Research is a core component. You can switch slides too. Research is a core component of the CMC experience with a required senior thesis, so all students will complete that. But also research institutes in areas like human rights and leadership, financial economics within the humanities, and innovation and entrepreneurship. The research institutes are available for students, regardless of your major, to be hired into paid research opportunities over the academic year and over the summer that focus on topics and issues that align with your academic interests and passions, but more importantly, touch on, again, those societal issues that our students are passionate about understanding and ultimately solving. On the sort of the student life side, career exploration plays a central role in your experience, starting from day one with one-on-one advising that begins in your first year, meeting with career services counselors, getting connected with the opportunities we offer, the funding resources that are available to you, and most importantly, understanding how to utilize our amazing and deep alumni and parent network when you're thinking about making connections and understanding professions beyond the college experience. We are a residential community integrated by class year. So within the residence halls, there's students of every single class year, which really brings the broader CMC community together and creating a strong networks. And so there's no first year housing, which means that the first year class really becomes integrated with the whole student community. And some of your best friends might be students that are 2 or 3 years older than you, but those networks and connections are important well beyond your time at CMC. And lastly, on the admission front, we look for things like leadership, initiative within the activities that you're involved in high school, and a sense of impact. So how your leadership is taking shape in a meaningful way within the areas of involvement, whether that's in high school, outside of your school, within your family. It doesn't have to be an official leadership position, and leadership can look many different ways. Academically, we're looking for students who are taking rigorous classes and doing well within the context of your high school curriculum. And we strongly encourage the admission interview and optional video response, which is a unique nuanced feature of our application process. So they are strongly encouraged. There's a lot of information on the website about that. But if CMC isn't in your radar, start looking up our interview options. And I will pass it on to Natalia.
Perfect. Thanks, Jen. Alrighty, so hi everyone. Again, I'm here representing Harvey Mudd College. So we are very much a reflection of the 1950s, founded in 1955. When you think about, the space race, the Cold War, kind of a STEM decade, which is where this idea of a STEM-based liberal arts college in Claremont really came from. So Harvey Mudd, we are known as the Liberal Arts College of Engineering, Science, and Mathematics. As far as our mission statement, Harvey Mudd was initially built to educate engineers, scientists, mathematicians, which includes obviously biophysics, math, everything in between there, computer science. But we are a liberal arts college at the heart of it. So just like the rest of our Claremont consortium, we allow our students to take classes outside of STEM areas. And it's actually something that's very unique and makes Mudd so specific. And it's something that students oftentimes come looking for, because the way that a Mudd education really works is that you are required to do a core program, which is different from Scripps's core program that you heard about earlier. Instead of 2 semesters, it's actually almost about it takes a little bit less than 2 years to complete. So the idea instead is that is our graduation requirement. So at Harvey Mudd, every student is actually admitted to the institution, not to a specific major. So if you're thinking about engineering or computer science or whatever it might be, that is totally fine. We don't have a specific number of majors that we are looking to admit for each of those different programs, but rather we are trying to admit students to the college as a whole. And you are actually allowed and expected and required really to take courses in every single department we have to offer at Mudd, which means even if you are thinking about doing engineering, you are still going to take a physics course your first semester. That's going to be special relativity to start right off the bat. And then you're also going to be expected to take some humanities, some social sciences, and arts classes as a part of our core curriculum. So we expect all of our scientists, our engineers, our mathematicians to be able to write so that you can take classes across the consortium. So it's a big portion as to who we are as an institution. Our students are required to take our core curriculum, then jump into their major, and then of course take 10 courses outside of STEM. We are the smallest out of all the Claremont colleges. So as you can see on there, 921, that is rather large for us actually, which is really interesting, but we are the smallest and mightiest of the Claremonts. And we actually have 14 majors. So the smallest list of majors to go along with that. If you look on our website, and for those that were asking questions about engineering specifically, we actually have what's known as a general engineering degree at Mudd. So if you're looking for mechanical engineering or aerospace or biomedical, just know that those are all specializations within our general engineering degree. So instead, everyone at Harvey Mudd that's interested in engineering graduates with a Bachelor of Science in general engineering and a specialization within those different areas. So that's a big portion as to how we figure out and keep our major list from going on and on and on, and we keep it at 14. Eddie, if you don't mind going to the next slide, I do want to make sure that we get a chance to talk about some of the different opportunities at Mudd. So Harvey Mudd is a very tight-knit community. 98% of our students live on campus all 4 years, similar to CMC, our campus is very integrated in terms of grade levels. So our students live together at all different points, and 100% of students do research or what's known as clinic on our campus. So every summer out of our 921, about 200 to 250 stay to do research on our campus. So if you stop by at any point during the summer, you'll notice them throughout campus doing research in the different labs, because the majority of our professors have labs on our campus. So what this looks like is anything from our underwater robotics lab to working in the clinic as an engineer, or computer scientist, or a computer science math major, because those majors are required to do clinic, which is essentially where different companies come to Harvey Mudd and you get the opportunity to work in the industry as a junior or senior in college. So if you're interested in working with different companies, like, I don't know, maybe you want to help us upscale the Toyota Prius motor up to the size of a big rig because we're trying to help decrease pollution emissions here in Southern California with Toyota. That's an opportunity to get involved in our climate action opportunities here on campus. Or maybe you want to work with the City of Hope to introduce different ways to do laparoscopic surgeries because you want to be a biomedical engineer. Those are different opportunities in clinic. You can see all the last 60 years worth of clinic exercises on our website if you're interested to see different ways that you can get engaged in the industry on campus. But obviously having these different partnerships means that Harvey Mudd allows our students to get different internships and research off campus, and this oftentimes leads to job opportunities. You can see our starting salary for our graduating class of 2024. Harvey Mudd was recently ranked the #1 return on investment school in the nation, which means that students are finding that, the return on the education that they're getting here at Harvey Mudd was worth everything that they went through, all the different opportunities that they did here on campus. Harvey Mudd is also very unique in terms of the consortium because we're actually governed by what's known as an honor code. So every single student at Harvey Mudd signs the honor code book, and it allows our students to freedom to have pretty much the entire campus at their disposal at any time. So oftentimes our students are seen doing take-home exams, meaning that they don't have to take the exam in the classroom with the professor. Group work is encouraged and actually expected. From the very beginning here at Mudd, we have pass-fail your first semester, so that way students are allowed to get used to this idea of doing group work, because realistically you can't pass the classes without doing it. That's intentional on the side of the professors to make sure that you are not feeling like you need to compete with the other students for a GPA, but rather help one another out to be the best that you can be in the STEM field. So it's a big portion. And then lastly, of course, in terms of our gender ratio, this is something we're very proud of, because oftentimes when people think about STEM fields, they're thinking this is a very male-dominated field, and that's not what you're going to find at Mudd. We're actually currently 51% female, 49% male, which is something very, very different in terms of STEM education. So this is just to give you a preview as to what Mudd is like, but I'm going to go ahead and pass on over to my colleague, Kapili.
Hi, everyone. So as you know, I'm representing Pitzer, and I do just want to briefly talk about the application requirements for Pitzer. So we are need aware, so your financial need is taken into account when you submit your application, which is to say, if you do not submit your FAFSA or your CSS profile to Pitzer, your application would be considered incomplete and therefore void. However, if those materials are missing from your application, we will absolutely pester you for them until we do receive them. Natalia mentioned that Harvey Mudd is the smallest and the mightiest of the bunch. Pitzer, I like to say, is the youngest and the feistiest. A lot of our students are oriented towards social justice, environmental sustainability. Social responsibility is one of our primary core values, and I'll break down the core values primarily for this presentation. We are also one of the only Claremont colleges that tracks demonstrated interest. So we broke down what demonstrated interest looks like, and I'll just kind of dive into that a little bit deeper. It is basically any interaction that you can get with the school. So if you have the chance to tour with us, we also offer virtual tours. If you attend an info session, if you interview, if you meet us at a college fair, or if we visit your school and you come chat with us, right? So all of those interactions will show up on your application. And that's just something that we keep in mind and credit toward our fit value when we're evaluating applications. If you can go to the next slide. I am just going to talk a little bit about the 5 core values. So our core values are student engagement, social responsibility, environmental sustainability, interdisciplinary learning, and intercultural understanding. You'll interact with them kind of every step of the application process should you seriously consider applying to Pitzer. So I always suggest to students to kind of take one and roll with it. We do have a supplemental essay. Well, we have a required supplemental essay and an optional supplemental essay for our application. The required supplemental essay will ask you to choose between two prompts. Why Pitzer, or how do you connect with the core values? And I think no matter which prompt you choose, the core values are a really great way of establishing a connection between yourself and the school, right? And they're great jumping off points for research. So I'm just going to provide very brief examples of some of those jumping off points for research, and then I'll move us forward into the Q&A section of this reception. So if you are particularly inclined towards student engagement, I recommend you checking out our orientation program or our shared governance model. About 60% of students on campus will interact with Student Senate at some point in their college career. If you're connected to interdisciplinary learning, I would check out the self-designed majors, where students can kind of explore either very broad or very narrow topics according to their interests. Students that will design their own majors will acquire advisors from each of the disciplines that they are interested in designing their major around, and those professors will help splice together the curriculum and make sure that you're on the right track to complete your curriculum. For social responsibility, I would check out the CASA Pitzer program. It is an academic program, so it is 4 credit, and it'll take up 3 credits of a semester, where on average students take about 4 credits, so 4 classes. And it is a project and research-based program where you'll connect with a community-based organization and act as an intern for them, and you'll also complete your social justice theory and social justice praxis requirement. If you're connected to intercultural understanding, I would look deeper into our study abroad programs, and then I would also check out our Inside Out program, our Pathway to BA. And then the last one is environmental sustainability. So as opposed to the CASA Pitzer program, which is an academic 4 credit research and project-based program, I would look at the Robert Redford Fellowship and the Bernard Field Station. Natalia, representing CMC, was once a Robert Redford Fellow. And that is an extracurricular resume building project and research-based fellowship. Just a little bit about Pitzer and our 5 core values. As I said, you'll kind of interact with them every step of the application process. And I recommend you kind of take one and roll with it. Students that tend to write about all 5 of the core values will fall into a trap about writing pretty expository and trying to define these well-defined concepts. I recommend taking one and rolling with it, just in that I want to see how one of our core values has impacted who you are as a student and who you envision yourself to be. But with that, I'll make the transition into our Q&A. So I have a couple of, oh, did you know? Is this my section, Natalia?
This is just a couple of things as we wait for more questions to come in the Q&A session. Yeah, if folks want to just kind of take a look over at some of the different really interesting facts about the consortium, we can kind of take a moment and go through this. And then Kapili, feel free if you want to go ahead and jump in on the Q&A.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, as you're kind of just reviewing this slide and reading it through, I'll lead us through the Q&A section. The first question that came to mind was, how much do the different colleges interact? Do people typically have friends from just the same college, or does it feel like separate colleges or one bigger one? And I'm happy to take the lead on this question. So as you might know, I am a Pitzer alum, and frankly, the colleges interact every step of the way. For Pitzer students, you'll have one class. And I think for each of the schools, the writing seminar class is isolated to students from that school. So for Pitzer, it is our first year seminar. That is the only class that you'll take that will not have students from the other colleges in it. Otherwise, they will be in each of your classes. You will be in their dining halls. We're on 1 square mile of campus, right? So each of the schools is right across the street from the next. And each of the schools will take turns hosting events every day of the week for students at the other colleges to kind of mix and mingle and socialize. So the Claremont Colleges students interact a lot, almost too much. But each of the schools is a smaller school with a larger school mentality because of the consortium. Does anybody else have anything they want to add regarding that?
I feel like I've heard it been described as like Hogwarts houses because one of the only things we don't share is housing. So thinking about like it's where you wake up and you go to bed, but maybe you'll have breakfast at Harvey Mudd and then you'll have your classes at Pitzer and Pomona that day, and then maybe your club meets at Claremont McKenna, and then you go to an event that someone's hosting at Scripps. So it's kind of like where you start and end your day, but you can spend as much or as little time at throughout the campuses because we're like a 25-minute walk if you go from the farthest point to the opposite point. So it's very you might just step there without even your choice. So because you're getting somewhere else. So it's like that's how we describe it sometimes is Hogwarts houses.
I think that that's a very apt comparison for sure. Next, I want to talk a little bit about study abroad. So do the schools offer do the offered study abroad programs differ among different schools? If so, are you limited to only the ones offered at your school? Does anybody want to take the lead on that?
Can kind of jump in a little bit here. So as we mentioned at the very beginning, obviously like study abroad is offered at all 5 Claremont colleges. There are some programs that are obviously a little more popular on the different campuses, as kind of previously mentioned. For Harvey Mudd, we don't have any specific programs like the way Kapili was kind of mentioning with some of the programs on Pitzer's campus. So instead, a lot of our programs actually rely on the other Claremont colleges and some other sister institutions across the world, to be honest. So just in terms of it, in terms of like Mudd's programs, they don't differ too much because it really just it depends on the other consortium members. So I guess that's the best way Mudd could answer that question.
I can answer for everybody. So every school has a different study abroad or study away office. And so you need to go to that specific school to find what the opportunities are. Some of them are shared, as Natalia just mentioned. Some of them are not shared. Most of them actually are not shared. So you want to go to your specific school study abroad office or study away office or whatever the title of it is and see what is offered at that specific school. But all of us definitely offer study abroad.
And this question is directed to Pitzer, but I do want to expand it to everyone representing the Claremont colleges. But in what ways does Pitzer meet the needs for first generation students beyond the classroom? So I'll answer that for Pitzer first. I am a first generation student, and one of the things that I really valued when I came to Pitzer was I was paired with a first gen mentor. So that was a student that went out of their way to reach out to me. And they were absolutely a resource for me that I utilized a lot. They helped me kind of get a grip on making the transition to college, right? And what it looked like to complete an assignment for my writing seminar, and to like stay on top of the workload, because frankly, making the transition from high school to college, like that workload is pretty substantial. So it was really nice to have someone that was kind of my dedicated friend, that would check in on me and make sure that I was easing into the transition well. How do the other Claremont colleges support their first generation students?
You want me to try to do an overall? Because I can do that too. So former high school counselor here. So I had to study all of these schools before coming back to Pomona. What I would tell you, and as a first gen person who went to school in Claremont myself too, every single one of these schools is about one-on-one attention. And what first gen students need is one-on-one attention because you don't know the questions that you're supposed to be asking. And so each one, you're going to have an academic advisor. There's going to be some sort of first gen club on campus. Each title is a little different. And if it's not on your campus, you can join the first gen club at the other campuses for the most part as well. the couple of us are Questbridge schools. There's 3 Questbridge schools. There's a Quest Scholars Network, and that's a lot of first gen and low income scholars in groups as well. But I think the best piece about it is that your professors generally want to get to know you. Your peers generally want to get to know you. And so as you think about those support systems, it's about making sure that the academics support is there. And so whether it's, an academic center, like a writing center, the image center, the media studies center, there's quantitative skills centers on multiple campuses. All of those centers are there for you. And, a lot of our parents will say a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And same thing happens here. So you need to say one thing to one person, and that will just expand so broadly. And so it could be an academic dean coming to talk to you. It could be a class dean coming to talk to you. It could be a mentor, like Kapili said, at the first gen mentor clubs. It could be from the Office of Black Student Affairs, Chicano Latino Student Affairs, the Asian American Resource Center, the Native American Initiatives Resource Center, or Native Indigenous Resource Center. All of those are 5C efforts. And so whether it's on the first gen space, it's on student of color space, on the academic space, whatever those spaces are, we're here to help you and make sure that you have your own individual experience coming through this place.
Thank you for the very thoughtful and coherent answer, Eddie. Does anybody else have anything they want to add in terms of first gen students? Great. I actually have something that I wanted to add. So one of the things that you can keep in mind about the Claremont Colleges as a whole is a lot of our classes are discussion based. While that does vary among discipline, it's important to keep in mind that there is a participation grade often accompanied with these classes. And one of the most important things that I learned I learned in like my junior year was that I should make an effort to try to say at least one thing every class. I think that is something that really fostered just like my communication skills, and just like also really helped me learn within those spaces. I think that giving yourself the opportunity to speak up, especially as a first generation student, it's a really important skill to learn, and it will carry you so far in your college career. Next question on the application: should the college's classes, professors, resources, and activities be mentioned in supplementals? Does anybody want to carry that for us?
I'm happy to jump in, sort of my take on supplemental. It is an important piece of the CMC application, and if that applies, my colleagues can thumbs up or chime in with their specifics. So for at least for CMC, and what you might see for many other schools, are supplemental questions that are essentially trying to understand what you understand about our institutions, and how we can use that to better grasp your fit with the college, alignment with our mission. There's lots of ways in which a school will frame it. But in terms of those questions, it's usually like a why CMC question. We're trying to understand what it is that's important to you about the college experience, what it is that excites you about our offerings, the campus community, our mission, maybe some of the things you listed here. So it's possible that your answer will include some of those things, but I don't think you should approach it as like it's a necessity or that's exactly what we're looking for. We are looking for a broad understanding and alignment with sort of what you want and what we offer. And if it includes that specific of information, then that's great. That's part of your authentic answer. If it's sort of a bigger conceptual response, then that's also great. We see a big range of the way students will approach those types of questions. What's important for you to do in now and in the months ahead of you is to really understand how each college you're looking at aligns with your interests, what you're hoping to gain in a college experience, and also how they're different from each other, and especially in this specific moment, like how the 5 Claremont colleges are different and unique from each other, regardless of the fact that when you get here, you can access some opportunities at the other schools. At a very basic level, what we don't want to hear, especially among the Claremont colleges, is that you are looking to apply to us to be in California, to be a part of the Claremont Colleges. It is a great resource, but we want to ensure we're admitting students and bringing students into our community that are specifically excited about our campus community and what we offer as unique institutions.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, keeping in mind, like, how can we establish a connection between ourselves and the school? A lot of my presentation was on Pitzer's core values. I think that identifying, right, maybe establishing that connection might be looking ahead at which courses are available, which professors you want to take classes with, especially if you're considering like how you might answer the supplemental essays for a given college. Utilizing those as a resource is a great way of envisioning what it might look like for you to be on campus and like what you might like to study, which classes you might be drawn to, or which activities you would want to participate in. And I'd love to talk about dorm life a little bit as we're kind of rounding out the end of this presentation. Dorms on campus can definitely make or break a student's experience. And I think each of the colleges has their own set of beautiful dorms for students to live in. I would argue that the quality is optimal. Some of the schools don't have air conditioning in their dorms, but most of them do. With that, I do believe we're at time. Anything else as we're wrapping this up, Natalia?
No, I do see maybe one that we can just do a raise of hands, which is like, which of the 5 Cs allow students to create their own majors? Raise your hand. I guess we'll just do that. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so 3 out of the 5, perfect. We'll just kind of end there. Again, thank you everyone for going ahead and putting your questions in the Q&A. Again, we tried to answer as many as we could. If you do have follow-up questions, feel free to contact the specific institution. You can always reach out. This session was recorded and will be posted to the Claremont Colleges YouTube page at a later point in the summer. But if you have any questions, again, follow up with the specific institution. Thank you so much for joining us, and we are at time.